Around the world, an estimated 2 million children are exploited in the sex industry. Among the offenders are British paedophiles, but no one knows how many. In 2008, authorities vowed to get tough with these travelling child sex offenders. But 5 years later, exposure can reveal Britain is failing to stop some convicted paedophiles going overseas to abuse children.
British governments have a responsibility to protect children, not just in their country, but children abroad from their citizens.
We reveal how offenders are finding new ways to exploit children abroad.
Dozens of British sex offenders are travelling abroad to teach or to work with children. This is the new sex tourism.
And we go undercover to expose the murky world of the child sex trafficker.
And can you get me two?
Yes.
And how old?
10.
And will they both be 10?
And other one is 9.
9. So one 9 and one 10.
This is the story of Britain's struggle to crack down on child sex tourism. I'm Mark Williams-Thomas. For 12 years I worked as a detective with Surrey Police. I've since become a specialist in child protection. But I'm about to leave my own life behind to go undercover to investigate child sex tourists. There is increasing concern about the number of British offenders who go abroad to abuse children. Latest figures reveal more than 300 have been arrested since 2008. But that is just the tip of the iceberg, with many more going undetected. Child protection laws here in Britain mean abusers are seeking out countries where they can offend with far greater freedom. I'm on my way to one of them, Cambodia. This Southeast Asian country is one of the most popular destinations for British child sex offenders. Poverty, corruption, and poor law enforcement make its children vulnerable to paedophiles. 10 years ago, Cambodia was shamed by pictures like these of young children working in brothels. A crackdown followed, but I'd been told the problem had simply moved underground. The country's capital is Phnom Penh. By day, the city is an exotic mix of temples and markets. But by night, it becomes a magnet for sex tourists. Posing as a British paedophile, I head for one of the city's most popular tourist areas, the Riverside. I'm with a member of our production team. We're both wearing secret cameras. As I begin my evening, the vulnerability of street children here becomes immediately apparent.
So it's Thursday evening, about 8:37, just walking along the riverside. Young little girl walking up to me. Hello. How old are you? 2? 3? She just stood, no one with her. Nobody following along at all. Very vulnerable, clearly very much at risk.
The cafes along the riverside are busy with tourists. I decide to join them. Within minutes, I'm approached by a tuk-tuk driver and another man he introduces as his brother. They say they can get me young girls.
Young lady? Yeah.
Young lady?
Yeah. Old lady.
Just so I don't waste my time. Just so I don't waste my time. And we're talking young, yeah? How, what age are we talking? Age? How young?
Yeah, young.
How young? How?
Everything.
Tell me.
You look. Yeah.
You want to look. Want here? Have a 16, 18. 18, 19, you want to look. And then 20, 21, 26, you want to look.
Have everything.
Have everything you want to look.
No.
And then 100.
How much you want?
How much?
How much you want? Old young.
Young.
Yeah, young. How much you
Young.
10 years, 15. 10 years.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
He know.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
Yeah.
The tuk-tuk driver, who says his name is Kim San, says he can find me a 10-year-old girl. I get in the vehicle and head into the night. Within 10 minutes, the tuk-tuk pulls up outside an anonymous-looking building. Our driver takes us inside. The girls in the brothel clearly aren't 10 years old. We ask to return to the Riverside.
Look one more.
Go on then.
Yeah, one more Riverside.
But our driver tells us he has someone he wants us to meet. He makes a call to a contact. Minutes later, a man on a motorbike pulls up.
You want a young girl, right?
Yeah.
For young girl, for right now, it's difficult to find, but have some, but it's expensive.
Okay.
You want you want to take it to the room or what?
Possibly. Where? Near? Because he's just taken us somewhere and there was no young girls there.
Actually, the young girl not stand on the street, have to contact someone.
Yeah, I understand why.
So, hai cái lát mong ấy, cái mà mong ấy, 100 nào mà mong ấy tự.
Ai tôi rồi nào à, tôi chắc tôi nó bỏ với bạn.
Phải đặt cái mà này, đặt quay mà này.
Nó tên gì con nè, bởi thật tôi nó mình ập trâu.
Maybe you can have wait like 1 hour, then
Maybe 1 hour?
yeah.
You find one in 1 hour?
Yeah.
Okay, young as in how young?
How young you want?
Well, you tell me what you can get.
Like 10, 13, 14. Yeah.
10?
Yeah, 10, 14.
10, 14?
Yeah.
Okay. Any younger?
Maybe no, younger is so illegal here.
It's illegal, yeah. I understand.
The age of consent in Cambodia is in fact 15.
Drink beer.
Yeah, I go back to Riverside. I'd like to down there.
Okay, so we went to the first premises. There wasn't young girls there. He said he'd take us to another one. He's driven along, he's stopped, he's made a phone call. The guy's then approached us on a bike. He's then said to us how young. We've asked him. He's then said 10, 13. I said young. He's then said, oh, younger than that's illegal. But he's then said that he's going to go and find a girl in an hour. He's going to come and find us and then tell us what the situation is. So, sad scenario. They still clearly have children, finding children and making children available for sex tourists.
We arrange to meet an hour later. I want to find out more about how these sex traffickers operate, but it's vital the child he says he can get for me isn't put at further risk.
We need to do this as quickly as possible in order for him not to go and procure a girl. Obviously, we've got to get a girl. So I'm going to go straight straight over to him. I'm going to tell him that I don't want, it's too dangerous, and as much information as we can, we will pass on to the NGOs and the authorities.
When I arrived 15 minutes later, the motorbike man who told me his name was Bo is with a tuk-tuk driver and a third man who he introduces as his brother Bo Run.
It's too dangerous around here now.
Sorry?
It's too dangerous around here now, so I have to say no.
No problem, because here, this area is belonging, because the police station is behind here. Every night they come to look after, to save for everybody, you know.
Right.
It's no worry about it. When I bring the girl, I don't bring to here. We just go to your hotel, then I bring her to your hotel directly. So that's fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I think it's a bit worrying at the moment. I mean, do you do this? Are you being caught? You're not. You don't work. Do you worry? I'm worried now.
Yeah, because I'm Cambodia. I know the law here. I know the police here. They don't care about that. So I do it every time with customers. They look like you. Some young lady just been. Yeah, you can. They don't care.
Lots of Brits like me.
Sorry.
With you, lots of Brits like me.
They find like 12 years old. I just bring them to the hotel.
So you
never one come to check or interesting about it. Like marijuana police. They sell marijuana on the street. They don't care. They just come here to show.
Where does the young girl come from? Is it nearby?
No, it's from across the Riverside.
Oh, you go across the river?
I just contact with my friend who stay across the river.
Right.
Ask, do you have some young lady? And he said, that's why I tell them to cross the bridge to come to see you.
Okay.
That's why
And how old were they?
They are 13 years old.
The man calling himself Bo is clearly disappointed. He isn't going to make any money out of me tonight, but that wouldn't be the last I'd hear from him. It's clear child sex tourism is still a problem here. Cambodia has been a favourite destination for child sex offenders since neighbouring Thailand began clamping down on the problem. The country has a troubled history. Back in the 70s, more than 1 million people were killed during the murderous regime of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. Poverty is still rife here, and that means children are vulnerable to affluent Western sex offenders. Men like Michael Leach. Leach is a civil servant from Surrey, but back in 2005, he was accused of posing as a doctor in a Phnom Penh orphanage and abusing 5 girls there, but he denied the allegations. The case was then dropped due to a lack of evidence, and Leach returned to Britain. But 5 years later, he was back in Phnom Penh. Child sex investigator Tim Wan told me what happened.
After we identify him again, so we conduct investigation on his activity. We obtained that he spent many time to buy underwear of the girl, buy clothes of the girl, buy candy, and also we use the tuk-tuk driver as our undercover to communicate with the trafficker. And through tuk-tuk driver, we obtained that Lee have connected to another trafficker in the countryside. So totally we identify 4 traffickers who arrange children, who arrange the girl for Lee to abuse at the countryside.
Investigators tracked Leach down to a guest house on the outskirts of Phnom Penh. When they raided his room, they found he was with 2 of his young victims. They're just 10 and 12 years old. Leach's behaviour during his arrest is bizarre.
Your name?
In September 2011, Leach showed the same disturbing behaviour when he arrived at court. He was finally convicted of abusing the girls he was filmed with during his arrest, as well as a third child. He's currently serving a 12-year jail sentence. Tim told me one reason the initial prosecution against Leach failed was because the alleged victims refused to give evidence in court. This, I was discovering, is a recurring problem in these kinds of cases.
They always choose the poor children or poor family. So the children often or always receive the support or benefit from the suspect. That's why they don't want to testify the abuse. And also the second point is because of the Cambodian culture, people, especially the female, never talking about the sexual relationship or sexual relationship to the other people because of it is affect to the family or it is related to the reputation or it is a shame for the family.
Tim is an investigator with an organisation called Action pour les Enfants, or APPLE. It carries out surveillance operations on offenders and gives the evidence to police to help secure prosecutions. It also works with law enforcement organisations from around the world, including Britain. Tim told me about a second British offender he'd investigated. Back in 2007, he spotted this man behaving suspiciously in Phnom Penh. Tim didn't know at the time that the man he was following was in fact on the run from British police for breaching his licence conditions. Ian Bauer, a former special constable, had convictions for sexual offences against a child and downloading indecent images of children. Now in Cambodia, Tim believed Bauer was spending night in his rented flat with two underage boys. Police charged Bauer with debauchery, but he was found not guilty. 4 years later, Tim and his colleagues would finally get the evidence they needed.
We obtained information from the monk at the countryside that there is a Western man often approach to the temple and use sex movie to show to the children in the temple, and also often show naked or show his genital to the children inside temple. So after getting this information, we sent our investigator to locate the suspect, and later on, he was identified as Ann Paul Bauer. And then just the local police approached him, and then he ran away by his motorbike to the field. So and after that, he was arrested on that day again in 2011.
Last year, Bauer was convicted on charges of abusing 5 children. He's currently serving 2 years in jail and planning an appeal. He denies the charges. But why was Bauer, a sex offender convicted in Britain, allowed to stay in Cambodia for 4 years, free to abuse children now? Christine Beddoe is a children's rights specialist and former head of a charity that campaigns on travelling child sex offenders.
The case of Ian Bauer stands out because I was the one who contacted the Home Office Minister and the head of CEOP at the time to identify why more wasn't being done to track down Bauer before he was eventually arrested in Cambodia. The information that came back was unacceptable, that the authorities didn't believe that they could do anything here in the UK, and we had to wait for the Cambodians to do something about it. But information was there, and there should have been powers put in place for the UK to act when it did. The fact that he wasn't brought back sooner shows an absolute weakness, and children were put at risk of abuse as a result of that.
Bharti Patel is head of the charity End Child Prostitution, Pornography and Trafficking, or ECPAT. It campaigns on the issue of travelling child sex offenders.
I do believe that we all have a responsibility on this. Governments of the source countries, governments of destination countries, the international police forces, as well as national and local polices, all have responsibilities. It is a complex issue because it takes into account different jurisdictions. What this means is we have to work together. There has to be international cooperation. There has to be real leadership at national level as well as international level.
In Cambodia, offenders are finding new ways to access children. Where once they might have targeted children openly on the street, now they are using teaching, charity and volunteer work to get close to them.
The new child sex tourism involves accessing children by way of teaching, through setting up orphanages and focusing on the most vulnerable children. Dozens of British sex offenders are travelling abroad without any qualifications to teach or to work with children, and they are finding their way into the hearts and homes of people because they're presenting as teachers. This is the new sex tourism.
Officers from Britain's Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre, or CEOP, are at the forefront of the fight against travelling child sex offenders. CEOP's boss is Peter Davies.
It's always been the case that an alarming proportion of travelling sex offenders who we do know about go to countries and occupy positions where they can have access to children. Teaching, charity work, including orphanages, in some cases religious ministry. And it's also precisely that kind of person for whom we designed the International Child Protection Certificate, which is a CRB check for UK nationals heading abroad to work with children. It is the first preventive measure of its type in the world from any country. And let's be clear, the UK is one of a number of countries from where our nationals travel to abuse children.
To find out more about what some experts are calling the new sex tourism, I'm travelling to Siem Reap in the north of Cambodia. I was about to discover just how far some British offenders would go to gain access to their victims. My name is Mark Williams-Thomas. I'm in Cambodia investigating travelling child sex offenders. I've been told that pedophiles are increasingly using teaching and charity work to access children. This is teacher Reginald Blakeley from Dorset. Investigators believe he used free English lessons to access children for abuse. Rim Vibble of Apple's CM Reap office told me what happened.
He met the boys along in the Siem Reap town, and then he tried to groom the boy and bring the boy for swimming, and he swam with the boy suspiciously, and he bring the boy for eat a porridge in the Siem Reap river, and he access to the school of the boy, and he taught English to the boy.
Investigators monitored Blakeley on 2 of his visits to Cambodia. This is footage they shot during his 8th visit to the country in 2011. Blakeley, in full view of passers-by, is clearly seen behaving inappropriately. Some of the material shows Blakeley putting his hand on the boy's groin, but we have chosen not to broadcast this. Apple, armed with this footage, were able to finally help Cambodian police prosecute Blakeley. Last year, he was convicted of committing indecent acts against 5 boys. The oldest was 14, the youngest just 7. Blakeley was sentenced to 2 years in prison, one of which was suspended. One of Blakeley's victims agreed to speak to me with his mother's consent. Sotea, not his real name, was just 11 when abused by Blakeley, whom he knew as Reg. With the help of a translator, he told me what happened. Tell me how you met Reg.
I met him when he walked up on the bridge. I met him on the bridge.
Did Reg ever give you anything? This may be difficult for you to answer with lots of people around you, but Reg touched you somewhere where he shouldn't do? And did you tell anybody? Can you tell me why? Because you're shy. It's really difficult, isn't it, to be able to talk about that. How do you feel about Reg now? And you're very brave talking and saying that Reg abused you, because you understand that what Reg did is wrong and you didn't do anything wrong. You understand that. Blakeley was released from a Cambodian jail in January this year. Apple told me they had been monitoring him since his release, but he'd recently disappeared. I went to the guest house where he'd last been seen. I wanted to find out where he was now and if he still posed a risk to children. I was determined to stay on his tail. But I've discovered that Apple warned British police about Blakeley when he first came to their attention. As a result, he was arrested when he returned home in April 2010. But following an investigation, no further action was taken. Just a year later, he was free to make yet another trip to Cambodia and abuse Sotea and other children. Peter Davies of CEOP said he couldn't discuss individual cases, but could talk more generally about the issues involved.
What we need to do is strike the right balance between the ability to control people who might travel abroad to abuse children, while at the same time respecting the fact that this is a liberal democracy and a free society, except where freedoms have to be constrained in order to preserve the freedoms of others. The regrettable fact is that we will always be dealing with some people who we know are a threat, but we can't prevent.
Back in Siem Reap, I was told about another British offender. I'd arranged to meet Benedicta Bywater to learn more. She runs a charity that helps vulnerable children and their families. 3 years ago, while looking for partners for her charity, she met Nick Griffin. The former scout leader from Wales had moved to Cambodia in 2006 to set up an orphanage, a position that would give him access to more than 50 vulnerable children.
So I arranged to meet him and I met him just down the road here. And my first thing was just that he was very, very superior He treated me like I was here on a whim, and very much talked about his way being the best way. He's a very arrogant man, to me. Perhaps not to everyone else. Obviously, some of these volunteers had really liked him, but I certainly didn't like the way in which his operation ran. And I saw a couple of the centres. At that time, he had 2 places, and they seemed a little bit hopeless. I think they weren't happy places. And now, knowing what he was doing, it seems even more sort of peculiar that he'd be so arrogant about the high levels of care he was providing when he knew all along that he was doing exactly the opposite.
What Benedicta didn't know was that when she met Griffin, he was already being investigated by Apple. 3 years earlier, they'd become concerned after seeing him swimming in a local lake with young children. These pictures may look innocent enough, but Apple would go on to discover that Griffin had abused 7 boys in his care. The orphanage had been a cover for the abuse, a way of accessing children. Griffin was arrested in a dawn raid at the orphanage 3 years ago. The children there had to be moved to a safe house. Griffin was finally jailed with Apple's help and sentenced to 2 years in prison. 1 year was suspended. He was later deported back to Britain and met by police at Heathrow. Last year, Griffin was issued with an order banning him from travelling overseas for 5 years. But a damning report in May this year said the current system of foreign travel orders is not fit for purpose, with just 45 orders issued in 7 years. Christine Beddoe is one of the report's authors.
A foreign travel order is a civil order. Police have to put evidence together, go to a court and present the court with enough information that shows that this person represents a current risk to children abroad. If that is successful, then the person can be prevented from travel up to 5 years. However, the amount of information that the courts expect to be provided is just almost impossible. The threshold for information is so high that it's almost impossible to get a foreign travel order, even at the most basic level. Foreign travel orders are proving almost useless in the case of many determined sex offenders who want to get away from the management here in the UK.
The report on foreign travel orders was ordered by CEOP's Peter Davies. Do you think foreign travel orders, as they are at the moment, are effective?
I think they're effective in a handful of cases. The issue is whether they're effective in enough cases and whether there are people who pose a threat to children who are out of reach of the foreign travel order regime, but who should be in reach of the prevention order regime that we operate in this country.
45 orders, travel orders, in a space of 7 years. That's woeful.
It's certainly not a reflection of the scale and scope of offending that's going on out there.
Back in Cambodia, Apple's investigators work with both the Cambodian police and foreign forces. One of the countries they work most closely with is America. Unlike Britain, it has agents based in Cambodia. 4 years ago, Apple were involved in Operation Twisted Traveller. 3 American sex offenders who already had convictions in the States were arrested in Cambodia for further alleged offences committed there. They were taken back to America to face trial. In the past 10 years, America has convicted almost 100 travelling child sex offenders for offences committed abroad. Police in Britain have similar powers to the Americans. They can prosecute offenders here for offences committed overseas. Indeed, earlier this year, fish and chip shop owner David Graham from Bournemouth was jailed for 21 months at the Old Bailey after admitting having sex with a 15-year-old boy in Cambodia. But it's only the second successful prosecution of its kind in Britain.
Less than 5 cases have ever been prosecuted under the extraterritorial law. And we've had a number of cases that have been attempted and have failed because of technical reasons, showing just how difficult the legislation is to use compared to the legislation, for example, in the USA or in Australia, where they're doing exceptionally well and really making a difference with their laws.
Prosecution of child sex offenders abroad is dismally low in this country. And that is probably the most worrying thing. And it also sends out the signal that British sex offenders can get away with committing this crime and not be prosecuted. So more needs to be done.
Peter, legislation exists in order for you to prosecute British offenders who commit their offences abroad but come back to the UK. But there's only been 2 cases. That is pretty pathetic.
It's not as many as people would like. One of the cases was only in the last few weeks and was one in which CEOP had a heavy involvement, and I believe more will come in due course. But the issue is this: is it better, as a matter of course, to bring a UK national who offends in a country, for example Cambodia, back to the UK to be prosecuted, or is it better for them to be prosecuted in Cambodia? Our view, and we've looked at this frequently, is generally speaking it's better for them to be prosecuted in the country where they've offended.
Back in Cambodia, I'm coming to the end of my stay. I'd received a series of calls from associates of the men I'd met on the Riverside just days earlier. They told me they wanted to do a deal. My 2 weeks in Cambodia are coming to an end. I've exchanged phone calls with associates of the men I'd met days earlier on Phnom Penh's Riverside. They think I'm a child sex tourist. I'm back in my hotel room and expecting a call. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, it's Mark.
Yes, sir.
The man tells me he is Kim San's brother, Bora. We believe it's the same brother tuk-tuk driver Kim San introduced us to on the Riverside. Posing as a paedophile, I want to find out just how far this man will go. I am worried still about getting caught. I don't want to go...
No. Don't worry about that, man.
I don't worry. And can you get me too?
Yes.
And how old?
The price is $800.
$800.
Yes.
Is that
from the countryside?
Is that from both or one?
Yes. It's younger.
In total. And how old?
Sorry?
How old?
10. Yes.
Did you say 10?
Yep.
And will they both be 10?
And other one is 9.
9. So 1 9 and 1 10. And where will I go? Because I'm a bit worried about going to a guest house. Will I go somewhere else?
So, okay. I understand about this. So, maybe how long you gonna stay for? How long you gonna stay more in Phnom Penh?
Well, I'm going to stay minimum of 3 days, but I may stay longer.
So you can make like rent the apartment, but not apartment, but like flat, a small flat.
Right. Can you describe one of them to me? Because obviously it's important I know what they look like. Describe one of them to me.
You just explain me like what do you want, like fat, thin, black, white?
Right. Well, what I guess really it's what you can what these two girls that you found. What's the 9-year-old look like?
But that for me, like it's okay. Look good.
Look good to you. I have no doubt in my mind that the men I've been dealing with are sex traffickers. They fixed a price, $800 American, or just over £500, and they say they have two girls, aged 9 and 10, they want to supply for sex. Following the phone call, away from the cameras, I pass on all the information we have to the Cambodian police. I've just had a meeting here in my hotel room with the Lieutenant Colonel from the Cambodian National Police. I've shared with him my information that relates to the men who have offered for sex two young girls, one aged 10, one aged 9. He's very grateful for that information. He's now going to take on that operation, and hopefully that will lead to the capture of two child sex traffickers and the rescuing of children. The Cambodian police investigation is still ongoing. I never met the two girls the sex traffickers were talking about. I can only imagine the desperate childhoods they were enduring. But there is hope for children here. Before flying back to England, I wanted to meet British-born Scott Neeson. He gave up a career as a Hollywood film executive to set up the Cambodian Children's Fund, helping children at risk and their families. His charity is based in one of Phnom Penh's poorest communities, where children would once scavenge on the local rubbish dump. And how many children are here in total in your programme?
This community centre puts through about 30,000 people a month. About 1,000 people a day come through here. Between medical clinic, maternal care, food programs. We have a nursery for under 3-year-olds whose mothers will go garbage scavenging, so they don't have to take them with them. We have a daycare for 3 to 6-year-olds who would be high risk because there's no one to take care of them during the day, or who've been abandoned in some cases. Hey, Moy, how are you? Look how red you are. I've never seen you go red before. You can go home.
What do you want to do when you grow up?
I want to be a doctor and a lawyer, and special in nature.
Oh, brilliant. Are you going to do that here, or are you going to travel?
Maybe here.
In Cambodia?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, they need doctors in Cambodia, don't they?
Another great example here is Ray Carr, who grew up on the garbage dump.
And what do you want to do when you grow up?
Doctor.
You're going to be a doctor as well?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Cambodia's sorted for doctors with you two.
Yeah, I know. I told them when I'm old, I want free healthcare.
Yeah. Perhaps I'll come back in 10 years and see where you are.
We'll probably drop by your house later, go and say hello, yeah?
Brilliant. Thanks you so much. Take care.
Bye.
And we're just amazing stories, aren't they?
Yeah.
The poverty that here creates the vulnerability, and the vulnerability of children that for some Westerners have set to exploit. They've come over here, they've abused children. But your scheme, your process here seems to me to be almost an enlightenment. You know, you're trying to shine light in the darkest of corners, which offenders look to exploit.
They do. The two things that are the classic pedophile, anyone that's a predator, they'll go to the place where there's the greatest economic disparity and the greatest belief that we'll get away with it, that it's either lawless or corrupt, or there's the highest possibility of getting away with it. And this community, this whole community, there's zero chance of getting away with it. The last guy that tried it, is still in a Bangkok jail.
Police forces are getting better, and with the help of other forces, it is really starting to make a difference.
It really is. If you come down here, you will get caught. I can guarantee it. The word will be out in a heartbeat. I'm very, very proud of that.
Do you like chocolate?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. And I like milkshake.
Yes.
You like milkshake? It was time for me to return to my life in England. There was one last person I wanted to meet. Earlier in my investigation, I'd learned that Reginald Blakeley, a convicted British offender, had disappeared from his guest house following his release from prison. I've been able to locate him. He's back in Britain, not in his hometown of Paul in Dorset. Instead, I've tracked him down to a bed and breakfast in Devon. I wanted to find out if he now acknowledged his crimes. I also wanted to find out if he'd been issued with a travel order that would prevent him from travelling abroad again and putting further children at risk.
Okay, let's go. Reg, I'm Mark Williams-Thomas from ITV's Exposure. ITV's Exposure. Reg, are you you're a convicted sex offender from Cambodia?
No, I'm not.
You spent a year in prison in Cambodia.
That doesn't mean anything. I spent a year in prison because I didn't pay their corrupt fee. There's a scam going out in Cambodia. They see any foreigners as a nice way of making money. There's quite a few people in there.
Okay, but Reg, I've seen footage of you indecently assaulting children.
You have not, because I have not.
I've seen the footage, Reg.
No, I'm sorry.
I've also spoken to 2 young boys that you indecently assaulted, and those 2 young boys tell me you paid both of them money.
That is absolutely untrue. God is my witness.
What were you convicted for in Cambodia?
I really don't know. I mean, it changed from one minute to the next.
Reg, tell me the truth. What were you convicted for in Cambodia?
Molesting. They said molesting children. But
okay, so you were convicted for child sex offences. How many children?
Unjustly.
Let me describe one piece of footage with you. I've got a footage of you by a little stall with a young boy with a red top on, and you've got him on your lap, and you've got your hand around his crutch, playing with him. Do you remember that footage?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, but do you not? I'm telling you, it exists. Have you seen that footage?
No, I haven't.
Right. Have you ever indecently assaulted a young boy?
No.
Have you ever touched a young boy indecently?
To my knowledge, no.
Well, you'd know one way or the other. Have you ever done that?
No, I hold them because, I mean, the children, Cambodian children especially, are very, very affectionate. They come leaping up and sitting on my lap.
So you do grab hold, they start kissing you, do they?
Yes.
And
some do, not a lot.
And do you respond? Do you kiss them back?
Yeah, occasionally, yes.
Right.
Yes. I mean, there's nothing wrong in
okay, so you'll kiss them back, and will you touch them? Will you perhaps put your hand around them and hold them?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Right. And of course, that's an indecent assault, isn't it?
That's not indecent. What's indecent about holding a child?
Kissing a child? It's not your. They're not your children, are they?
But if they've kissed me, then occasionally, not all of them. I mean, it's not. Doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
But I mean, if they actually kiss me, then of course I suppose they just want a kiss back. That's all.
Right. You give them a kiss back. And then what age are these children?
Well, obviously kissing, I mean, they'd only be up to about 10 or 11 years old maximum. You wouldn't do it to an older child because, well, they wouldn't do it to you.
Reg, I mean, I find that very worrying. I have to say, I've worked in this field for a very long time. For you to say that there is nothing wrong with you kissing a 10-year-old boy, having a 10-year-old boy sit on your lap, that for me makes you a dangerous risk. And that's a dangerous risk in a public location.
Well, I'm certainly, I mean, I'm not a dangerous risk because having been jailed for something which was an absolute scam, they just demanded money and I refused to pay corrupt money. I said I give my money to poor people, not to corrupt judges and lawyers. Because of that, I was jailed incorrectly, unjustly, and I served a year, and then I only gave money at the end in order because I knew the year was coming to a close and they just simply add on another year. So I then very, very reluctantly paid them money so that my term finished at 1 year.
Right. But let's be very clear, you were convicted for offences against children, and I have seen footage of you kissing and holding a young child, which you don't deny you do.
No.
Right. That is an indecent assault.
I don't consider, I honestly and sincerely don't consider that.
I hear what you're saying, but let me tell you that it is an indecent assault, right?
Blakeley denies he was grooming or abusing boys when he was first spotted by Apple in 2010 and says the police found no evidence of this. Blakeley told me that British police were waiting for him when he landed at Heathrow. But was there anything to stop him from going abroad again?
Are you now on the sex offenders register?
I believe I am. Wrongfully, but I believe I am.
Right. And have you got, can you travel anywhere you want? Have you got any conditions on you?
No.
You've got no conditions?
Well, just to let them know when I go, right. And they say, okay.
Do you think the public expect that if you're a convicted child sex offender in the UK, you shouldn't be allowed to travel abroad?
I don't know what the public expect. I think there's a proportion of the public that do expect that. I can tell you I've met some senior police officers in other countries who expect that as well. And it's not a comfortable situation to be in to explain to some of them why UK nationals do still travel, even when we've got intelligence to suggest that they shouldn't.
Every single member of the public, I think, would say to you, if it's about protecting children and stopping convicted child sex offenders going abroad, you should stop them.
Well, I think that's fine, but the people who need to listen to that dialogue are not the police, because we don't make the laws, but legislators. And I can tell you, and you know this very well, that just because a piece of legislation might make a significant difference to the ability of CEOP or others to identify people who pose a threat to children, doesn't mean it automatically gets on the statute books. That's a democracy for you.
CEOP is set to become part of Britain's new National Crime Agency. It's hoped this will strengthen its ability to tackle the problem of travelling child sex offenders. But experts say much more needs to be done to protect children at risk.
I think every child is our responsibility, and no matter which country they're living in, no matter what their circumstances are, and we have a responsibility that every child is safeguarded against child sex abusers.
We've got to start dealing with this problem on a much bigger scale than what's done before, and that's going to take political will. And I think it's something that the Prime Minister downwards has to show leadership on. It's not just about police at the local level. This is something that's got to go from top to bottom and through a whole range of our institutions. Otherwise, we'll be back here in another 10 years saying exactly the same thing.
A spokesman for the Home Office told us,
"The UK has some of the toughest powers in the world to deal with sex offenders, but we are not complacent and keep these powers under constant review. We have strengthened checks on individuals on the sex offenders register, including a requirement to notify police of foreign travel and provide bank account, credit card and passport details. This improves management of offenders in local communities. We are also looking to improve the use and effectiveness of foreign travel orders."
The Cambodian government did not respond to our request for a comment. My investigation focused on Cambodia, but I could have travelled to one of a whole list of countries around the world visited by British child sex offenders. Latest hotspots include Kenya, India and Brazil. Until more is done in Britain, vulnerable children in countries like these will remain at risk.